Hello and good evening, Chicago. Welcome back in for another episode of Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Lots to go through tonight. The big news out of Wrigley Field, in case you hadn't heard, Cubs president Jed Hoyer announcing that Jason Heyward will spend the rest of this season on the injured list, and then they will look to move him in the offseason. So Jason Heyward has played his last game as a Chicago Cub. We will react to that. Plus, then look at what other moves were made at the trade deadline last week by the White Sox and the Cubs, and some of the moves that were not made on both sides of town, what we think that will mean as the two teams are heading in their different ways, getting ready to finish out the rest of this season. We will then head up to Lake Forest and check in on the Bears as they are still doing training camp, getting ready for Family Fest practice tomorrow, and then their first preseason action this weekend, hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. And then finally, before we get out of here, a check-in on the Chicago Sky as they are finishing up their regular season and getting ready to defend their title in the playoffs of the WNBA. All that and more coming up. This is Chi-Town Weekly on IE Sports Radio. Buckle it on up. Here we go. And once again, good evening, everyone. I am Adam Karnick, your host here on Chi-Town Weekly. Very glad that you are here with us, spending part of your sports week with us here tonight. Lots that we are going to be going through tonight. Talking baseball, both sides of town, the Cubs making big news right before their game against the Washington Nationals tonight, and of course the White Sox continuing to flounder around in the hopes of trying to make the postseason. We will be reacting to the news of the day, plus the news of last week of the trade deadline. We'll be talking some NFL preseason action with the Bears, and we will be talking WNBA Sky before we get out of here tonight. So much to do and only so much time. So without any further ado, of course, you are listening to Chi-Town Weekly and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, where for the last 8 years, here at IE Sports Radio, we have been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes to bringing you tailor-made shows, building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and with your help, we are ready to take the next step. When you go to our website, iesportsradio.com, you'll see our Patreon link with 5 different tiers. The first one starting at just $5 a month. This donation gets you a shout out on all of our shows. Higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to our podcasting university, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment. Thank you all very much for continuing to make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. And a thank you to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised, Emlos Great, Key to the Gate, and Anonymous. Thank you for your continued support. And of course, IE Sports Radio is available for you on all the major social platforms. You can find us at IE Sports Radio, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Just search at IE Sports Radio. This show is available for you as well on Twitter at IESRC, or you can follow along with me personally on Twitter. I am at Adam_Karnick. And if you are listening live here tonight on this Monday night in the Spreaker app, you can hop on into the chat room along with Taryn and Davidson. Good evening, fellas. lots to talk about tonight. We can interact that way, or if you just want to sit back and relax and listen to me that way, I am here for you in whatever way works best. So we want to start the show tonight with the big topic, the big news of the day, coming out just about an hour ago as the Cubs were getting ready to take the field against the Washington Nationals, the now Juan Soto-less Washington Nationals. Cubs president Jed Hoyer announced effectively that Jason Heyward is going to be placed on the injured list for the rest of this season. He will not play any longer this season with the Cubs, and then in this offseason, they are going to look at moving him. Either if they can trade him, see if anybody would be able to be willing to take him as a trade, or most likely what's going to happen is he will officially get designated for assignment and then move on from the team. But effectively, the Jason Heyward era in Chicago is over. Now, he hasn't played this season since late June. It's been a month and a half since he's played, but apparently that June 24th game will go down as his final one with the club. He does have 1 year left on his deal. His deal originally went through 2023, but they will move on from him from that. Maybe they'll be able to trade him, but obviously, the first thing when you look at it, it was an 8-year, $184 million contract. And in general, you would not be wrong to say that he failed to live up to it. That he absolutely failed to live up to the terms of that contract. I'm pulling up his baseball reference page right now. You look at his batting numbers in Chicago, and he just hasn't been good in Chicago since he's been there. You're talking overall a slash line of 245, 323, 377 for an OPS of 700 and an OPS plus of 85. Obviously, that's not worth $184 million. You're talking about a guy who offensively has been 15% below major league average in his 7 seasons with the Cubs. And his best batting average year, he hit 270. But the power was just never there. Outside of 2020, which that was a weird season anyway. That's the only season where he had an OPS plus of above 100. He had an OPS plus of 129. This season, he's an OPS plus of 57. Yuck. So obviously, if you want to look at it and say, it was he's failed from an offensive standpoint, you can easily make that argument, and a lot of people have. But that fails to take into account the entire picture of Jason Heyward and what he's brought to the team, brought to the organization. He has remained a tremendous defensive player throughout his career. He won Gold Gloves in both 2016 and 2017, playing outstanding right field. Also has played some center field very admirably well. He's been a good base runner. And what could be more importantly, potentially, he's been an amazing ambassador and teammate and representative of the club. Of course, one of the first things is his very first year with the team. He signs in 2016. And one of the first things he does, he knows that it's going to be David Ross's last year. And David Ross was a veteran in Atlanta when Heyward came in as a rookie. And Ross helped take Heyward under his wing and helped acclimate him to the pros. Heyward paid for Ross to have a suite at every road trip they went on, every hotel room every hotel they stayed at. David Ross got a suite so that he could bring his family with him on road trips. Heyward is in the process right now of developing a multi-million-dollar baseball academy on the west side of Chicago to help kids and help families learn the game of baseball and better hone their skills and giving back to the community. He hasn't had any controversy for anything off the field. And of course, so famously in 2016, Game 7 of the World Series, he gave the rain delay speech that, depending on how Hollywood you want to make it, that's what won the Cubs the World Series, was that speech, for that players only speech where Heyward put everybody into a weight room, made sure that none of the coaches or anybody that wasn't a player was out of there, and helped rally the guys, helped calm everybody back down, and said, guys, just do what we do. Just play baseball. Just pick up the man next to you. So while, yes, it would be very appropriate to say he's been a failure on the diamond, he's failed to live up to the expectations of a $184 million contract. You cannot say that the Cubs off the diamond, off the field, will be better off without Jason Heyward. He is somebody that when they have the 10-year or 15 or 20-year reunion, whenever it is, whenever they have the reunions for the 2016 club, Jason Heyward's going to be somebody that always gets invited back to Wrigley. And I hope that the crowd acknowledges him and cheers for him, despite the lack of offense that he gave in his time. From there, I do want to springboard a little bit into some more baseball type things. I may as well, we'll stay with the north side of town for now. Major League Baseball's trade deadline was last week. We previewed it a little bit in last week's shortened show. Want to dive in a little bit more. I did a video on trade deadline day after the fact. I posted it. You could find it again on all of our social sites on IE Sports Radio. Posted it to Twitter. It got posted to Instagram, posted to TikTok, all those places. We'll start with the Cubs, sticking with the Jason Heyward theme here. The Cubs, of course, they send off a bunch of pitchers. David Robertson, Scott Efros, some other cogs of their bullpen. 4 big bullpen pieces got traded away to bring back minor league pitching. But two huge pieces stayed. Ian Happ and Wilson Contreras, both of whom it had been rumored they're out the door. They're aging bats. Taryn asking, the Cubs are tanking at this point, but that gets into what I'm about to talk about here. Ian Happ, all right, they decided not to move him. Okay, they've got one more year of team control with him. They could conceivably move Happ in the offseason or wait next trade deadline and conceivably move Happ. They didn't have to move him right now. Wilson Contreras, though, that surprised me. I was very excited last week. If you go back and watch the video, I was very excited when they didn't trade Contreras, because my hope was what that meant was they were recognizing that, all right, we didn't get a deal for him that we liked. Why don't we just look at keeping him? Why don't we just pick up negotiations and look at keeping him? He's 30 years old. Yes, catchers don't necessarily age gracefully because of the physical demands on the position. But the National League has the designated hitter now, and Contreras has been spending a lot of time as the designated hitter. Why don't they just keep him? His bat is he's still one of the best offensive catchers in baseball. And as his defense declines to a point where you really can't use him more than once or twice a week behind the plate, you use him as your designated hitter. Use him at first base on occasion. There have been many a catcher that have gone down this path. Just because he's 30 years old doesn't mean that he's dead. He's still useful. Well, the Cubs aren't doing that. They are instead, they have had no meaningful conversations with him up until now, and it sounds like, listening to Heyward, that they're not planning on having any meaningful conversations. That Contreras, despite the fact that he was giddy with joy, he literally jumped out onto the field last Tuesday night in St. Louis when he found out he was not going to get traded, that he was in fact staying with the Cubs. He literally jumped out onto the field and bounced around, hugging bench coaches and just being the most excited you've ever seen a baseball player be to be on a losing team. But he loves this organization. He loves this city. They have no intentions of keeping him. To which I say, then why didn't you trade him? What was the point? I get it. I realize that Heyward didn't necessarily get the deal he was looking for with Contreras. But they're about to lose him for nothing this offseason. At best, they will get a compensatory selection, which will be probably a third-round draft pick. A third-round pick in MLB. I know we talk about drafts a lot in the NFL, obviously, and in NBA circles. Now, the NBA doesn't have 3 rounds, but in the NFL and in the NBA, you're used to seeing draft picks being useful and helpful and having fairly immediate dividends within the first couple of seasons. MLB, in Major League Baseball, your best case scenario with a draft pick is he makes it to the majors, because most of them don't. But even if he does, your best case scenario is he makes it to the major leagues 4 or 5 years from when you draft him. You're talking about the compensatory selection they're going to get for Wilson Contreras might make the big league club by 2028. You're telling me you couldn't get anything for Wilson Contreras that helps you faster than 2028? I find that impossible to believe. So I'm baffled by the fact that they chose not to move Wilson Contreras at the trade deadline. I understand that the trade market didn't produce that your asset in Contreras wasn't worth as much as you thought it was. I get that. I understand that part of it. But you know what? Everybody has known for the last 13 calendar months that Contreras was going to be available at the 2022 trade deadline. Everybody had that whole time. The other 29 general managers in Major League Baseball knew what you were doing too, Jed Hoyer. They knew what game you were trying to play. They knew that the Cubs were going to be selling from a position of weakness, from a position of desperation. The other 29 general managers held all the cards in these negotiations. So, of course, you weren't going to get what you thought. You know, go talk to Ryan Poles up at Lake Forest about that when he traded Khalil Mack out to the Chargers and all he could get was a second-round pick and a future sixth. You know, that's what happens when teams know that you're going to be moving somebody. You don't get their best offers. But I promise you, I'd be stunned if the best he got was one or two players who are currently in low A ball. But even that, even if that's all the best offer you got, that's still two guys that could potentially help you 3 or 4 years from now. Still faster than what this compensatory draft pick you'll be getting next April or May or whenever the MLB draft winds up being. June, I think, normally is when it is. Way faster than that will help you. So to Taryn's question and to point to come around full circle on this a little bit, I have no idea what the Cubs' overall plan is. They're clearly tanking. They are clearly in tear-down mode. But this thing might be long in the making, which is mystifying. You're welcome for Khalil Mack, by the way. Take good care of him. I hope he eats quarterbacks for breakfast, lunch, and dinner while he's on the West Coast now, so the timing is all different. He could, the course of a game, I'm sure he could figure out a way to sneak in a quarterback sandwich for breakfast, lunch, and dinner while he's out there with the Chargers. But it's just, I'm so confused by the Cubs with this. The White Sox weren't exactly all rainbows and sunshines last Tuesday either. The White Sox, for all the talk of the two players that the Cubs didn't sell off, the White Sox made 0 moves at the trade deadline, which had a lot of Sox fans up in arms. Hey, you are right in your championship window. This is when you're supposed to be going all out. Kenny Williams is still in that building, and Kenny Williams would buy at every trade deadline, regardless of if the team was realistically in contention or not. He was always looking to buy to improve the team at the trade deadline. This trade deadline, nada. They made a move a week ago tonight, required Jake Dykman And that was it. That was all they did at the trade deadline. I can't say that I'm too disappointed or frustrated, though, in that. And here's why. The Sox are more than just one or two rental players away from competing. We have seen this season they have got some major problems. They can't consistently hit the ball. They constantly play down to the level of their competition. I mean, look at this 4-game split against the Rangers over the weekend. That's a team they should have minimum taken 3 out of 4 from. Yet here they are. They've got the night off tonight. A lot of baseball has the night off tonight, incidentally. I'm not sure why exactly, but that's how it worked, I guess. They're getting ready. They're going to start a 4 games in 3 days set with the Kansas City Royals in Kansas City tomorrow. Doubleheader tomorrow, and then they play single games against the Royals on Wednesday and Thursday this week. So 4 games in 3 days against the Royals, and they'll figure out a way to somehow split those 4. They are more than just a rental or 2 away from seriously competing for this World Series. I still wouldn't be shocked to see them miss the playoffs altogether. As we sit, they are still 2 games back of Minnesota and a game back of the Guardians. And they just keep figuring out ways to stay right there. All they're doing is just ticking days off the calendar. I wouldn't have minded seeing the Sox make a move for, say, a Juan Soto from Washington, who's team control for 4 or 5 more years. You know, somebody that could help now, but would also be a help in the future. But a pure rental, to me, made no sense for the White Sox at any position for this year, just because they needed so many of them to try and fill all the gaps to win this year. But I'll say this, for this coming off season, they better have a plan and they better get at it. Because this season has been a massive disappointment for the White Sox. And if they come out and just try and stand pat and just assume that this year was an outlier and everything will be better next year, they're going to be in a world of hurt. They're going to be in big trouble if that's what they come out and assume. So I'm not disappointed that the Sox didn't make any moves at the trade deadline. But that's with the caveat that they better make some moves this winter to make sure that this season doesn't happen again. I do want to, real quick, before we go to break, before we take a quick break, I do want to give some kudos. Dylan Cease has been just amazing this entire season for the Sox. And in his most recent start against the Rangers this weekend, Cease pitched 6 innings, giving up 1 earned run on 2 hits, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. He set a major league record. This was his 13th consecutive outing where he gave up 1 earned run or less. He hasn't given up more than 1 earned run. He hasn't given up more than 1 run in an outing since mid-June, in an outing where he gave up 6 unearned runs. This is the longest stretch, 13 consecutive starts without giving up more than 1 earned run. That is the longest stretch since we've been tracking earned run average. Baseball has been tracking earned run average since 1913. That nobody's gone on a streak like this. I do hope that Cease gets acknowledgement and votes for the Cy Young for this year. I fear that because the team is just hovering at 500 and barely staying afloat in the playoff picture, that he's not going to get the consideration that he would otherwise if he was on a more serious contender like the Yankees or the Astros. But I hope that he gets some Cy Young votes because he deserves it. That's definitely a piece that the Sox should be looking to build around and continue with. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we are going to talk some NFL football. We're going to talk some Bears, and we're going to talk some Sky before we get out of here. This is Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Motorsports takes many forms, and there's one show on IE Sports Radio that's ready to cover it all.
I sure hope you're talking about you and I, Daryl, because I know the Extra Mile is the best place to go for everything motorsports related.
Yes, it is. From NASCAR to IndyCar to sports cars to everything in between, IE Sports Radio has everything covered for the fastest sport in the world.
Plus, don't forget all of our random shenanigans along the way.
That's right, Caitlin. So for plenty of motorsports coverage and plenty of Caitlinisms, check out The Extra Mile on IE Sports Radio with Daryl Kinsey Jr. and Caitlin Seen, Thursdays at 8 p.m.
Lopan, they didn't even want you. Heck, they didn't even want me. But you know what? Right about now, they have no choice. Looking for the real sports talk? Talk that's for us, the people? Look no further. The Wait a Minute Show, a prime time sports comedy cocktail that tucks you in at night. Join me and Lopan Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 2livestewsradio.com and Saturday 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the waitaminuteShow.com. Sounds like a plan to me. Ain't that right, Lopan?
Indeed.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Spent a lot of the first half of the show talking pretty much all baseball. Now we're going to move on and talk about the Bears to kick off here the second half of the show. Bears getting ready for their preseason opener, hosting the Kansas City Chiefs in their one home preseason game this year. And it has been a lot of injuries here at training camp to start off the Matt Eberflus era. Shouldn't be surprised. I mean, Eberflus is a defensive-minded head coach. And defensive-minded head coaches, it feels like more so than offensive-minded coaches, are always so gung-ho about pushing the players to their limit. And we saw this when Lovie Smith took over in 2004 and brought the cover 2. And it was, all the talk was about, oh man, look how much weight everybody's dropped. Oh, Brian Urlacher's dropped 15 pounds. Lance Briggs, Charles Tillman's lost weight, and Mike Brown's lost weight, and all these players have lost weight. This is great. And then they all started suffering hamstring issues and pulled muscles and all these injuries because the weight they lost was no longer there to protect their bodies from injury. And here we see Matt Eberflus coming with a cover 2 and talking about, get your track shoes on. We're going to run, and conditioning, cardiovascular. And look, the guys are getting hurt. We've seen Lucas Patrick go down. We have seen Tevin Jenkins, who knows what's been going on. He has started practicing now. That's good. He's showing up now on the offensive line a little bit, but the wide receiver room, which was already probably the thinnest spot on the entire roster, your 2 through 4 wide receivers are gone. N'Keal Harry has a high ankle sprain. That could be the season for him. High ankle sprains, you never know when guys are coming back. Velus Jones Jr. Is out with something. We don't know what. And then free agent acquisition Byron Pringle is out. So you're down to your starting wide receivers now are, of course, Darnell Mooney, and then Equimanius St. Brown coming over from the Packers, along with Luke Getsy, is going to be the starter. Taryn is asking, will the Bears be in the market for a wide receiver? I have no idea. I don't know what would be available. They already made a trade to get N'Keal Harry from New England. I don't know what they would have left to get. I hope they're not looking at trading serious draft capital to get simply a body at wide receiver, because they're not going to be very good this year. The Bears are going to be bad. This is definitely an off year for the Bears. I think the way this season goes perfectly for the Bears is Justin Fields breaks out, has an amazing season, and the Bears win 5 games, because then they get a top, they get a top 10, maybe even a top 5 draft pick, and can look at addressing some of the holes on the roster. Look at getting either a stud left tackle or a wide receiver or whatever they decided is the biggest priority for them. But Gordon, their first draft pick, he's out with an injury. You've got Roquan Smith on the PUP list. Now, that's more contract related, more than injury related, I think, at this point. But still, you've got a lot of guys out. As we head into the preseason game this Saturday, I have zero expectations for what to see from the team. My number one priority always for preseason games is don't get hurt. The starters are going to play. Great. Wonderful. Fine. I would be just fine with them not playing either, quite frankly. I'd be just fine with it. Just don't get hurt. Do not get hurt in this game against the Chiefs. Yes, Matt Nagy is coming to town. You want to show him up because just every week there's more stories about how just incompetent he was. Another example that came out this past week, in case you somehow missed it, the Bears were working on a scramble drill where, what to do if and when the pocket breaks down, what everybody's assignments are. Or just, hey, we're going to have some plays that are designed for Justin to leave the pocket. And here's what everybody's assignments are when you leave the pocket. Apparently they never practiced that last year. Darnell Mooney told everybody that they never bothered to practice a scramble drill last year. When the play broke down and Justin Fields broke contain, nobody had any idea where to go. They had no idea what to do, what their assignments were, because Matt Nagy's offense was all about Matt Nagy, apparently. It just, I don't know what happened with Nagy. The guy that we saw in 2018 is not the guy that got fired at the end of 2021. I don't know what happened in those couple of years in between there, but he was not the same guy. I hope Nagy refines himself there in Kansas City. I hope he's able to take a hard look at who and what he was these last few years here in Chicago compared to what he was when he first came, and figures out how to avoid that next time. Because I'm sure he'll get another shot. Coaching trees are like that. Very cyclical. But I'm glad to see that Tevin Jenkins is back and working with the first team and trying to get some stuff in. I'd like to see him develop and turn into a solid asset for this team. Doug Kramer, apparently, one of the 6th round picks at center that they had, has apparently been impressing. Maybe not enough that probably not enough that you hope he contributes this year on the team, but he's been better than advertised. Braxton Jones has been doing phenomenally at left tackle. Now, he did get hurt over the weekend. We'll see how seriously, how severely. But it's going to be a mess for the Bears. But my primary hope for this game Saturday is just don't get hurt. Do not get hurt. Get some tape out there. Get lathered up. You get to hit somebody not wearing your own colors, not wearing your own jersey. That's always fun. That's always enjoyable. Just don't get hurt. Don't have anybody else get hurt. That's the big thing to take away from this. Jaquan Brisker, I know you're going to want to go out and hit somebody. That's fine. Don't get hurt. Just don't get hurt. As we get into this, as we start these 3 preseason games here, just don't get hurt. That's the big thing to take away from the preseason. It's just under no circumstances should anyone get hurt. It's not worth it. Not in the preseason. Injuries happen. They're a fact of football, but if you can avoid them at all in the in the preseason, you want to do it. Preseason's the time. One team that's definitely needs to be taking things seriously right now, the Chicago Sky. I know I've talked about them quite a bit over this summer. They just continue to impress. The Sky, they've got the night off tonight, but they are sitting currently at 25-8. They are in first place in the entire WNBA. They have clinched the Eastern Conference, for what that is worth, which we'll get into it in a minute, but it's not worth anything anymore, unfortunately. But they've won their conference. They are sitting atop the WNBA. And with their most recent win over the weekend, they beat the Connecticut Sun 94-91 yesterday to give them their 25th win. That is a new franchise record for wins in a regular season. They are dynamite. There's one more week left in the WNBA regular season. The Sky have, of course, they've clinched a playoff berth. They've clinched one of the top 2 seeds into the playoffs. And the WNBA has changed up its playoff format a little bit here. They're going to be a bit more traditional of a playoffs. Last year, and in years past, they have had buys essentially into the semifinal round. The Sky last year, of course, went in as a very low seed. They were a 7 seed in the playoffs, and so they had to go all the way through, play all 3 rounds in order to win the championship. There's no buys this year. It's going to be a straight. Seeding is league-wide, so that's why winning the conference doesn't really mean anything for the Sky this year. They won the East, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything for them, because you take the top 8 teams across the entire league and play a very traditional 1v8, 2v7, etc., and then just straight down the bracket from there. They're not going to be reseeding at the end of each round like they have in years past. So it's going to be, just think of the traditional NBA playoffs, how you have the winner of the 1-8 plays the winner of the 4-5 and progresses its way down. That's what the WNBA playoffs is going to be this year. So Chicago, with 3 games left, they've assured themselves of either the 1 or the 2 seed. So they're going to have home court for the first 2 rounds at least, should they make it that far. With 2 more wins, they've got 3 games left. If they win 2 of these final 3 games, they're guaranteed home court throughout the playoffs. They'd be guaranteed the 1 seed. If they beat Vegas, they play Seattle tomorrow, and then they play Las Vegas on Thursday in Las Vegas, and then they finish up on Sunday. They're at Phoenix, a repeat of last year's WNBA Finals. All 3 are teams very much in the playoff race. Vegas is assured a playoff spot. Seattle is assured a playoff spot. Phoenix is vying for that final spot. They could be anywhere from 7 to completely out of the playoff. They could finish anywhere from 7 to 15, depending on how this week goes for them. The big one for the Sky, of course, will be the game against Vegas. They've played Vegas twice in the regular season and split the first 2 games. They've got a 2-game lead on Vegas for the number 1 spot overall. If they were to take that game on Thursday against Vegas, they would clinch the tiebreaker against Las Vegas, and that would also be enough to give them home court throughout the playoffs. So they can, if they win 2 of their final 3, or if they simply beat Vegas on Thursday, then the Sky will have home court throughout the WNBA Finals. They are going to be a tough out for anybody. Looking right now, they could wind up getting, realistically, they could wind up getting anybody, Atlanta, Phoenix, the Liberty, the Minnesota Lynx, or the Los Angeles Sparks. Any of those teams could wind up being Chicago's first round opponent. Chicago would match up very nicely against any of those teams. What's going to be interesting would be then the second round opponent, which would most likely either be Seattle or Washington. Going to be a very interesting final month here for the Chicago Sky. They are set up very nicely to defend their WNBA title, and hopefully we will be seeing another banner raised there at Wintrust Arena later on this year. All right, that is going to do it for us tonight. Be sure to stick around as Taryn Rodriguez comes on right after us doing an episode of Set Point, getting us caught up on the National Volleyball Association playoffs that went on this weekend. Taryn was there for the playoffs, live covering them for IE Sports Radio. I know he had a ton of fun doing that, taking in a lot of volleyball. He will be breaking all that down, so be sure to stick around and check on that from Taryn after us. Next week, we've made it to episode 100. Next week is episode 100 of Chi-Town Weekly. Wow. Where has the time gone? To celebrate, we will be breaking down a Bears preseason game and hopefully no significant injuries of any kind. We can only hope. We'll of course be continuing to check in on things baseball. The Cubs have the Field of Dreams game later this week. The Major League Baseball's got to be regretting that decision at this point. Cubs, Reds, yuck. Nobody wants to be featuring that on a Thursday night. But we'll have reaction to that. Plus, we will have the playoff field set for the Chicago Sky. So we'll have that to break down, and there will be college football right on the horizon. We can start diving into that a little bit as well, looking at Northwestern and Illinois and Northern Illinois, Southern Illinois, my alma mater, Concordia, out in the burbs there. Lots of football, college football that we can break down and discuss. So we will have some fun next week for episode 100. Until then, big shout out and thank you to our Patreon supporters, MLO Great, Bay Area Rays, Key to the Gate, and Anonymous. Thank you to Larry B for all the hard work he does. Thank you to Taryn and Davidson for hanging out in the chat room with us tonight. Thank you for coming and listening to the show. Really appreciate it. For IE Sports Radio, I am Adam Karnick. We will see you next time.